Ladies and gentlemen, imagine carrying two identities inside one heart, one that swore to destroy the walls, and another that swore to protect the friends inside them. That is the tragedy of Reiner Braun, one of the most complex and emotionally shattered characters in Attack on Titan. Reiner's dual identity is the foundation of his entire tragedy. From the outside, he appears strong, dependable, even heroic. He stands tall, speaks with confidence, and acts like the reliable big brother figure among the cadets. But beneath that composed surface lives another identity, one built on deception, duty, and destruction. Reiner Braun is both a soldier of the walls and a warrior of Marley, and those two roles were never meant to exist inside the same person. As a child growing up in Marley, Reiner was desperate to prove himself. He wasn't the strongest candidate. He wasn't the most naturally gifted. But he had something powerful, an intense need to belong. Becoming a warrior wasn't just about honor, it was about earning recognition from his homeland and especially from his family. He believed that if he succeeded, he would finally be accepted. That belief pushed him to inherit the power of the armored titan, a symbol of strength and national pride. But once he crossed into enemy territory and began living among the people inside the walls, the lines between enemy and ally began to blur. He trained beside them, he laughed with them, he suffered with them, he watched them struggle against titans, not knowing he was one of the reasons their world would fall apart. Over time, pretending to be a loyal soldier stopped feeling like an act. It became real. This is where the fracture begins. Reiner didn't just play the role of a soldier, he became one. He internalized the values, the bonds, and the trust of the people around him. He formed genuine friendships, he protected his comrades in battle, he encouraged them during training. And the longer he lived this double life, the harder it became to separate performance from reality. Psychologically, this kind of identity conflict is devastating. Reiner couldn't simply switch between roles like flipping a coin. His mind began building walls of its own. There were moments when he spoke as a proud warrior of Marley, determined to complete his mission. And there were moments when he fully believed he was a loyal soldier fighting to protect humanity inside the walls. These weren't calculated manipulations, they were fractures in his psyche. The weight of maintaining two opposing truths crushed him slowly. On one side, he carried the mission, break the walls, retrieve the founding titan, and prove his worth. On the other side, he carried friendships and shared trauma. He saw fear in the eyes of people who trusted him. He saw grief when comrades fell in battle, battles he had helped create. What makes this dual identity so powerful is that neither side is completely fake. The warrior identity is real. He was raised, trained, and conditioned to believe in it. But the soldier identity is real too. His experiences inside the walls shaped him just as deeply. He didn't just betray others, he betrayed parts of himself. In many ways, Reiner becomes a symbol of how war destroys identity. When children are turned into weapons, they are forced to adopt roles before they even understand who they are. Reiner wasn't born broken, he was molded into conflict. His mind created separation as a survival mechanism. If he fully accepted the horror of his actions while still needing to carry them out, he would collapse under the guilt. So his psyche split the burden. This duality reaches its most painful moments when his mask begins to slip. The confident soldier persona cracks, revealing confusion, exhaustion, and despair. He struggles to remember which side he is supposed to be on, not because he forgot the mission, but because emotionally, he is divided. Reiner's dual identity is not just a plot twist. It is a psychological battlefield. It shows how loyalty can be manipulated, how belonging can be weaponized, and how pretending long enough can fracture a person's sense of self. He is not simply living a double life, he is trapped between two truths, both demanding obedience, both refusing to let him rest. And that is what makes him not just a warrior in armor, but a broken human being inside it. The psychological collapse of Reiner Braun is one of the most haunting character arcs in modern anime storytelling. At first glance, he appears composed, strong shoulders, steady voice, dependable presence. But that exterior slowly erodes as the weight of his choices begins crushing him from within. Reiner's mind does not shatter all at once. It fractures gradually, piece by piece, under pressure that no human being was meant to carry alone. When he first infiltrates the walls, Reiner operates with clarity. He has a mission, he has a purpose, he believes he is serving justice for his homeland. But as time passes and he builds genuine bonds with the very people he is destined to betray, something inside him begins to split. The enemy stops looking like monsters. They start looking like friends. This is where the psychological strain intensifies. Reiner cannot reconcile two opposing truths. The people inside the walls are devils, who must be destroyed, and they are innocent humans who laugh, dream, and suffer just like him. Holding both beliefs at the same time creates unbearable cognitive dissonance. Instead of resolving it, his mind does something drastic. It divides. There are moments where Reiner fully embodies the proud warrior of Marley, focused, strategic, mission-oriented. Then there are moments where he genuinely acts as a loyal soldier of the walls, protecting his comrades with real emotion and sincerity. This is not simple deception. It becomes dissociation. His mind constructs separate compartments to survive the contradiction. This fracture becomes more visible after the fall of the walls and the years of battle that follow. Reiner watches people die, people who trusted him. He hears their screams. He sees the destruction caused by the very mission he helped carry out. Each loss carves guilt deeper into his conscience. But he cannot stop. The mission still exists. His homeland still expects results. The pressure never fades. Eventually, the psychological strain reaches a breaking point. Reiner begins to lose stability. His speech patterns shift. His personality switches abruptly between soldier and warrior mindsets. There are scenes where he appears confused about his own identity, responding as if he truly belongs to the walls, only to snap back into his role as an infiltrator. These are not strategic manipulations. They are cracks in his mental foundation. One of the most devastating aspects of his collapse is his exhaustion. Reiner looks tired, not just physically, but spiritually. His eyes lose their fire. His posture feels heavier. He carries shame like invisible armor that weighs more than steel. He understands the consequences of his actions more clearly than anyone else, and that awareness becomes suffocating. Unlike characters who embrace villainy or fully reject their past, Reiner is trapped in the middle. He cannot undo what he has done. He cannot fully justify it anymore either. That limbo is where his mental health deteriorates the most. Guilt becomes constant background noise. Self-blame becomes routine. There are moments where he questions his own worth, his right to live, even his purpose. War did not just scar his body, it fractured his identity. As a child, he wanted validation. As a soldier, he wanted belonging. As a warrior, he wanted approval. Instead, he ends up carrying trauma from both sides. His collapse is not dramatic in a loud, explosive way. It is quiet, internal, a slow unraveling. What makes his breakdown so powerful is how human it feels. Reiner is not overwhelmed because he is weak. He is overwhelmed because he was forced to make choices far beyond what any child should endure. He was taught to hate people he would later love. He was told to destroy lives in order to save his own. His psychological collapse becomes the ultimate cost of war. Not just death, not just destruction, but the erosion of identity itself. Reiner Braun does not break because he lacks strength. He breaks because he has been strong for too long under unbearable weight. The weight of guilt, war, and childhood indoctrination is the invisible armor that crushes Reiner Braun from the inside. Long before he ever stepped foot inside the walls, long before he inherited the armored titan, his fate was already being shaped by a system that turned children into weapons. Reiner was not born with hatred in his heart. He was raised with it, taught it, and rewarded for believing in it. As a child in Marley, Reiner grew up in an environment where identity was tightly controlled. He was taught that his people were inferior, that redemption could only come through service, and that becoming a warrior was the highest honor he could achieve. For him, this wasn't just propaganda, it was hope. Becoming a warrior meant restoring dignity to his family. It meant proving that he was worthy. It meant finally being accepted. But indoctrination is powerful because it doesn't feel like manipulation. It feels like truth. Reiner trained relentlessly, even when others doubted his abilities. He wasn't the most talented candidate. He struggled, he failed, yet he pushed forward with desperate determination because his dream wasn't about glory, it was about belonging. When he finally inherited the armored titan, it wasn't just a military promotion. It was validation, it was confirmation that he mattered. And then came the mission. Sent to infiltrate the walls as a child soldier, Reiner carried not only titan power but the expectations of an entire nation. He was told the people inside were devils. He was told their destruction was necessary. He was told the mission justified any sacrifice. That belief allowed him to move forward at first. It shielded him from doubt. But reality inside the walls was different from what he had been taught. The people he was supposed to see as monsters were human. They laughed during training. They shared meals. They dreamed about the future. They cried when comrades fell. And slowly, without permission, Reiner began to see them not as enemies, but as friends. This is where guilt begins to take root. Every smile he returned, every bond he formed, every battle he fought alongside them deepened the emotional cost of his hidden identity. When the walls fell and chaos consumed the city, Reiner saw the consequences of his mission up close. He saw terror in the eyes of civilians. He heard screams, and even if he told himself it was necessary, his heart could not remain untouched. Guilt in Reiner's story is not loud or theatrical. It is heavy and constant. It lingers in the way he looks down during certain conversations. It echoes in his silences. It grows stronger with every fallen comrade who trusted him. He carries the memory of each loss, knowing that in some way, he is responsible. What makes this burden even more tragic is that he was just a child when he made these choices. A child conditioned to believe there was no alternative. He did not start the war. He did not design the system. Yet he became one of its most visible weapons. And when he begins to understand the full scope of the suffering on both sides, the guilt multiplies. War strips away simplicity. It erases the illusion of clear heroes and villains. Reiner eventually realizes that the people he was sent to destroy are not demons, they are victims of the same cycle of hatred that shaped him. That realization is devastating because it means his mission was built on a lie. And if the foundation was false, what does that make him? Childhood indoctrination gave him purpose. War gave him trauma. Guilt gave him awareness. Together, they create a crushing emotional weight that defines his character. Reiner is not haunted only by what he has done, but by the understanding that he once believed it was right. That awareness is painful. It forces him to confront the fact that he was both manipulated and responsible. He becomes a living example of how cycles of hatred perpetuate themselves through children who are never given the chance to choose freely. His story shows that guilt is not weakness, it is proof of humanity. It is evidence that beneath the armor, beneath the warrior title, there is still a human being capable of reflection. And that is why his burden feels so heavy, because he carries not just the weight of war, but the weight of realizing he was shaped by it before he ever understood it. Redemption for Reiner Braun is not a shining heroic comeback or a dramatic declaration of forgiveness. It is quiet, painful, and uncertain. It lives in hesitation, in regret, and in the fragile decision to keep moving forward even when you feel unworthy of survival. Reiner's journey toward redemption is deeply tied to his struggle simply to exist after everything he has done and everything he has lost. After years of battle, betrayal, and psychological collapse, Reiner reaches a point where he is no longer fighting for glory or approval. The proud warrior candidate who once dreamed of honor is gone. In his place stands someone exhausted, hollowed out by guilt and trauma. He begins to question not just his mission, but his own right to continue living. This is what makes his arc so powerful. Redemption for Reiner does not start with confidence. It starts with despair. He sees himself as a failure. He failed to fully complete his mission. He failed to protect his comrades. He failed to remain mentally strong. And perhaps most painfully, he feels he failed the friends he betrayed. That crushing sense of inadequacy almost consumes him. There are moments where he appears ready to give up entirely, as if disappearing would be easier than carrying the burden any longer. But survival becomes its own quiet form of resistance. Despite everything, Reiner continues to stand up. Not because he believes he deserves redemption, but because there are still people who depend on him. The next generation of warrior candidates look up to him. Children who remind him of himself, young, hopeful, shaped by the same system that once shaped him. When he sees them, something shifts. He doesn't want them to carry the same emotional scars. He doesn't want them to inherit the same guilt. This protective instinct becomes a turning point. For the first time, Reiner's actions are no longer driven by blind loyalty to Marley or desperate validation. They are driven by responsibility. He begins fighting not for propaganda, not for glory, but to shield others from the suffering he endured. It doesn't erase his past, but it reframes his present. Redemption in his case is not about being forgiven by everyone. It's about choosing to prevent further harm. It's about acknowledging wrongdoing without running from it. Reiner does not deny the destruction he caused. He carries it openly, and yet, he still steps into battle when necessary, not out of pride, but out of obligation to protect life. There is a tragic beauty in this transformation. The same boy who once wanted to be a hero for recognition now fights quietly, almost reluctantly, simply to minimize damage. He no longer seeks praise. He no longer seeks validation. In many ways, he expects none. What makes his redemption so emotionally powerful is that it feels incomplete, and that's realistic. War does not offer clean resolutions. Trauma does not disappear with one brave act. Reiner's guilt remains, his memories remain, his scars remain, but alongside them, there is growth. He learns to see his enemies as human. He confronts the cycle of hatred that shaped him. He understands that survival sometimes means enduring unbearable memories. And through that understanding, he becomes something different from the indoctrinated child he once was. Reiner's redemption is not about becoming pure. It is about becoming honest. He is still flawed, still broken in many ways. But he is self-aware. And that self-awareness allows him to make choices rooted in empathy rather than conditioning. The human weapon slowly transforms back into a human being, someone capable of reflection, protection, and even sacrifice without blind ideology. Reiner Braun's journey is not about winning or losing a war. It is about surviving long enough to understand the damage it caused, and choosing, despite everything, to fight for a future where fewer children are forced to become what he once was. Reiner Braun's story is not simply about a warrior hidden behind armor. It is about a human being crushed beneath expectations, ideology, and the unbearable cost of war. His dual identity shattered his sense of self. His psychological collapse revealed the damage of living a lie for too long. The weight of guilt and childhood indoctrination exposed how deeply systems of hatred can shape innocent minds. And yet, through all of that pain, his struggle for redemption proves something powerful. Broken does not mean beyond humanity. What makes Reiner unforgettable is not his strength as the armored titan, but his vulnerability as a person. He represents the soldiers who were once children, the enemies who were once friends, the villains who were shaped by forces larger than themselves. His journey forces us to question the simplicity of good versus evil and confront the uncomfortable truth that war often turns victims into perpetrators. In the end, Reiner is not just a broken warrior. He is a reflection of what happens when loyalty is weaponized, identity is manipulated, and children are forced to carry the sins of nations. Yet even in his darkest moments, he continues to stand, to protect, and to move forward despite believing he does not deserve peace. And maybe that is the most powerful message of all. Because Reiner Braun teaches us that sometimes the strongest armor is not the one that protects your body, but the courage to keep living after your world has already shattered. And that is why the broken warrior remains one of the most human stories ever told.